Thank you very much, Mia, and I want to say thank you to Assemblywoman Lupardo for being such a dominant force here in New York State. I think the whole state is following your lead. So, why Kentucky? A lot of people ask. Maybe some folks already know this, but Kentucky was the natural center for hemp production in the United States before it became illegal. There is a long-standing history in Kentucky. There's also this other cousin of hemp grown all over Kentucky. So Kentuckians are very familiar with hemp and marijuana and very familiar with the difference. Interestingly, the crop that replaced hemp when it was made illegal was tobacco. And so tobacco has a rich history until recently in Kentucky, and it's caused an awful lot of problems and a lot of economic problems. So Kentucky has a great need at this point in time, and I believe that's why they're out in front of the hemp situation. As a matter of fact, hemp was actually legally grown for a few years in Kentucky, in and around Clark County and Fayette County near Lexington, as part of the war effort in the late 40s. So there are still some older gentlemen who were hemp farmers. We're proud to have one of them as one of our partners this year. It's very gratifying for them to see hemp back legally in the ground. So the problem that Kentucky has is that tobacco is declining. This is a 7-8-year-old graph, and it's gotten considerably worse. There is ample opportunity for resources, ample opportunity for farmers who want to farm, and I think it's important to recognize that helping farmers farm is very, very significant. Many folks are approaching marijuana legislation, hemp legislation, with a top-down approach. Maybe that's not the only way to do it. Maybe there's a better way or a more fundamental way, and maybe that's from the bottom up. So we at GenCanna are very happy to help farmers farm. Who is GenCanna? Our founders come from all over the country. They've had experience in California since Prop 215 in the 90s. They moved to Colorado. Our CEO was there, helping some folks, including Josh and Joel Stanley, move forward legislation and rules in 2009 and 2010 that allowed for production of hemp-based products, of marijuana-based products and oils. We have our chief science officer, who was very instrumental in interviewing the Figge family when they were discussing how they might use cannabis. So Mr. Chris Stubbs played a very fundamental role in providing testing and dosing to make the first parents, the famous parents, very, very comfortable with using cannabis for their child. So GenCanna has a rich history and has evolved into Kentucky because Kentucky just simply makes sense for us and makes sense for farmers. So what have we done? In 2014, we managed to get in a small or outdoor crop. And we managed to do this because in Kentucky, their laws have been made to line up with the federal farm legislation. That's probably because that little piece that Assemblywoman Lupardo referred to was written by folks from Kentucky. And Kentucky had legislation already on the books when the federal laws changed. Kentucky's Department of Agriculture is also a very open, wonderful partner. It's amazing to think of regulators as partners. I hope Dr. Trey Riddle finds them similarly open, but basically they're asking us how they can help us move the industry forward, how they can make this into something mainstream and open, and they very much want to encourage everything that helps farmers and or the economic growth behind that. So we managed to get some stuff into the ground in 2014, very, very much artisanal, I think we would call it. We learned a lot. We learned a lot about what to do and what not to do and how plants can acclimate to what we're doing. and what we want to do and how we can move this to scale, because you need quality before you can move to scale. So over the winters, we learned indoors in greenhouses and got to the point where we were literally ready to go outdoors in a big fashion last spring. And so 2015 was all about our evolution from small artisanal into scale, literally from seed to scale. And so that matters because there are a lot of noble folks making very, very wonderful use of industrial hemp. Again, a nod to the Stanley family in Colorado for the great work that they've done. Thank you. But there are many, many other uses of industrial hemp. There are food needs all around the globe. There are nutritional needs. There are many other health aspects that are very, very important. Diabetes, things like this that will come into play over the next years as we're able to have a large-scale supply of reliable, sustainable product. This is really going to matter. So I'm going to show a little video about, can we get the volume?
Capability. I'm a fourth-generation farmer. My son is a fifth-generation farmer. In the beginning, when GenCanna first brought this opportunity to us, it was something hard for me to swallow. As my own personal research went on, and I found out the opportunity and the potential for this crop. Now, I'm actually one of the more predominant people in my family that's managing this crop. Within a very short amount of time, we have moved this operation in a way that it's commercialized. Because of GenCanna and because of the potential that this one unique plant has, we're not going to raise any tobacco next year. We're going to replace tobacco with this crop, and I just can't wait to see where this is all going to go.
The Hemp Research Campus will be repurposed for industrial hemp, serving as a modern-day breeding, research, and development hub. The campus sits on 147 acres and is equipped with greenhouses, barns, organic land, laboratory and research space with state-of-the-art technology, offices, and includes 16 outbuildings.
Thanks. Thank you very much. We've had a very gratifying experience working from the bottom up in Kentucky thus far. So we took the plants that we saw from the greenhouse picture previously, and instead of that small plot, we started to get big. So this is a plot that's being tilled in preparation. We used some existing technology. This is actually a tobacco planter that we repurposed for hemp and did an experiment with an esteemed tobacco farmer just outside of Winchester, Kentucky, and had a very, very successful response there. We also tried and found this to be generally more successful, a vegetable model. These are raised beds with plastic, with drip lines, irrigation, fertigation, all there. And you can see we used a water wheel planter with real humans putting plants in ground at the bottom. This is a labor-intensive situation as we're moving forward here. So we got plants into the ground, and it was pretty neat. They The scale that we tried on 5 different farms was really quite impressive and dramatic. This is from the rolling hills of Jackson County, one of the very poorest counties in the entire United States. And we ended up with some very, very successful plots. This is from Clark County, closer to Lexington. We had a lot of challenges. At one point, this field experienced rain on 24 out of 26 days from the end of June into the middle part of July. Amazingly, the plastic that we thought would help us save on water and keep the plants wet actually kept them dry. There were some lakes that formed out in the middle there, and it was great to have had the plastic down for the opposite of our intended purpose. So we literally are learning by doing as we go. Here's one of the staffers from Senator Ron Paul's office. They're very happy to see the effect of their work. And then we got to harvest. Harvest is really tough. We learned a lot about harvesting. It's very, very manual for us this year. We used an awful lot of labor. It was very gratifying to see a lot of people working hard in the farms. It was really an arduous process. This is another farm, a steamed tobacco farmer down in Garrett County. You saw the son of the gentleman on the right, Mr. Shell, and the brother of the gentleman on the left earlier. That was Giles Shell. That's Jonathan and his father, Gary. They are amongst the finest people in Kentucky and amongst the finest tobacco farmers, and now they're hemp farmers only. So that we're very excited about that. We tried hanging some of our hemp to dry in one of their tobacco barns, and had mixed amounts of success. We tried to use other simple, available farm technology. This is a corn silage chopper. It's very old school technology. We literally chewed up hemp plants and spit them out the back. It's a great way to process a lot of hemp very, very quickly. Unfortunately, when you put it into a small mass and chop it up, biology starts to happen quickly, and it provides difficulties in other regards. So we ended up using a lot of manual labor and taking a lot of cuts-off plants, putting them in simple, recyclable, repurposed produce containers available all across the United States, and we brought them to the Hemp Research Campus for processing. We got some really nice results. This is a beautiful bud from Garrett County, and as we were contemplating this wonderful harvest, we thought, you know, this stuff looks really good. We ought to get this squared away with law enforcement. Law enforcement really, really matters, because the ability to inform and elevate the discussion with those people who have fears or concerns about industrial hemp is very significant. So what we at GenCanna were able to do was to interface with the Kentucky State Police, the Cannabis Suppression Unit. If you Google Cannabis Suppression Unit in Kentucky on the internet, you'll find them driving around in incredible helicopters, dropping out of the sky with flamethrowers, and they're the folks who take down lots of illegal marijuana crops. And now we're happy to call them partners. We went and saw them. Thank you. We went and saw them at their shop, and they were incredibly resistant. But we talked to them, we understood their concerns, we made their concerns ours, and then we brought them out to the Hemp Research Campus. We thought they'd be there for about an hour. They stayed for 4. It was awesome to be able to walk them around and say, we've got nothing to hide. We're an open book. We're helping farmers farm. There's lots of people employed here. Please help us out. And they did. So that's been a very, very wonderful experience. I've got to point out that GenCanna was truly blessed to have a fellow named Daryl O'Connor, who he's one of our founders, 26 years experience with the ATF. He's been on Capitol Hill for several years. his ability and acumen to bring law enforcement to sit down at the table and to simply open their minds and understand is very, very gratifying. And so we've been able to build on that, build on the relationships in Kentucky to include some very positive interactions, even very recently with the DEA. Very excited about how this is evolving moving forward. So when you grow 100 acres of this stuff out in the fields, and then you think about how it's traditionally processed, you worry about hanging and drying it, and it might work in Colorado or California, but it doesn't work in humid Kentucky. So we devised this thing we call Big Blue, and it allowed us to take, you can see on the left there are crates and crates and crates of our industrial hemp. It allowed us to quickly dry, grind, and package all of this wonderful green material into a dried, stable, reliable form within just a little while. So each of these bins contains roughly a couple hundred kilograms of high CBD industrial hemp, and it is very much available for use at any point in time. It's important that we treat this as a business and have an inventory and not as a crop that we need to sell every November. So that's one of our warehouses with some of these bins sitting in them. As we're moving along, I want to get to the legislative effect. It's very, very important that everybody understands what's happening in the industrial hemp world, because it's very different from many of the confusing and juxtaposed marijuana rules and legislations. Hemp is simple. Someone has decided that 0.3% is the demarcation line. Above that, it's a drug. Below that, it's food. Broccoli also has less than 0.3% THC. So as we move forward and specify that hemp is food, we find ourselves coming up with conflicting legal opinions, with conflicting concerns in different jurisdictions. They get very excited about what might be legal or what might not be legal. Fortunately, the good folks in Kentucky have been able to move things forward. Just this December, in the omnibus spending bill that was signed middle of December, there was this neat section that made it very, very clear that no three-letter agencies can spend any federal money in order to interfere with federally legal industrial hemp. Awesome. There was also another amendment in legislation back in July that allows for interstate transfer of viable hemp materials between states that have corresponding legislation that falls under 7606 of the Farm Bill. This is very, very important as we move forward. And this is all leading to further developments. What is going to be happening over the next little while, we really strongly believe, is that other federal agencies are going to come out and support industrial hemp. There may be some very interesting legal opinions from federal agencies about the legality of industrial hemp produced in a pilot program under 7606. It is not a controlled substance if it is produced in that manner, and that is important for everyone to recognize future forward. So while all this is happening, we have to say thanks very much to the people in Kentucky who have really forwarded this. This is former Agriculture Commissioner Jamie Comer, and I don't know a person in Kentucky who doesn't point to this guy and say, thank you for driving this forward. It hasn't always been easy, but he's certainly been an incredible driving force for Kentucky, and I believe that leadership is applicable in many other jurisdictions. So GenCanna has moved things along because we believe that we, like many others in this room, probably everyone in this room, is a steward of the industry. We think that it's very, very important that all of us don't screw this up. We're in the nascent stages, and the mistakes that we make will be used by those who want to shake a finger and that's not helpful to anyone. So what we need to do is remove the fear from those places where there are fears. We need to be able to elevate the discussion with law enforcement, as we spoke about, with legislators. Wouldn't it be great if everyone was so educated and understanding about hemp as Assemblywoman Lupardo? We need to especially inform regulators. We have government bureaucracies that don't really understand what industrial hemp is. It's like this in Kentucky too. Everyone's learning because it's all very new. But if we can move the discussion forward, move the message forward, and have it very simple that this stuff, industrial hemp, is different than marijuana. Sure, it's all cannabis, but it's very different because legally it's defined as industrial hemp and has less than 0.3% THC. So you needn't be afraid. This is important for doctors, for the research community, for parents, because there doesn't need to be this THC. Let me ask you, if you're going to suggest that this stuff produced from industrial hemp is very healthful, such that you might go and buy it sometime soon in a GNC store or at Whole Foods or in the local supermarket, etc. If that's the case, would you prefer that it was produced inside a warehouse downtown Denver or in an open field in a place like Kentucky or the southern tier of New York State? I think it's pretty obvious, and I think that the natural ability to help farmers farm, to grow a crop that can replace other crops that aren't there, is really very, very compelling. Modern agricultural techniques allow this crop that was once very natural to Kentucky to move all over the globe, even places where it might not have grown naturally or in abundance over the past number of years. There are many ways to skin this cat. And all of this is about creating a confidence in those that are worried. We all understand things at one level here, but we need to project to others, especially consumers at one point. It's important that folks who might want to buy a product realize that this has been produced in a federally legal manner, American grown, American made, not an import from somewhere, overseas or China or whatever that stuff is. This is naturally American. It's been great to have made this in Kentucky in such a way, and it will be great as we can see our friends in Colorado continue on their expansions. It's very, very important. What's missing here, though, is a set of standards. They don't really exist. And so GenCanna is committed, and a bunch of good folks in Kentucky are very committed to establishing standards so that when we say reliable, sustainable, when Trey talks about requiring farmers to meet certain standards, let's write that down and define that so it's easily understood. So there are standards that need to be established in agronomy at the farm level. There are standards for potency because of compliance. There are standards for processing. If you're going to say the stuff's food, you ought to be able to prove it, right? There needs to be special attention to food safety. It's pretty clear that if this stuff is federally legal because it's not a controlled substance, that someone like the FDA is going to be interested. And it turns out they've been very interested very, very recently. So it's important to establish some standards so that government officials and regulators can understand that this is okay. It's legal and it's food. And then we need to especially work towards consumer confidence. And this is something that not many people have focused on in the hemp industry yet. As we move this forward, the ability to have standards and advocate those standards will allow folks all over to champion the industrial hemp industry, but also to point to standards that are reliable, sustainable, that can be copied over and over. If you're going to be buying a product in Whole Foods or Walmart one day, you're going to be very, very confident that it's the same thing every day. The people who are making that product are going to need to know that it comes from a place that has standards, that has grown in a sustainable way, a product that is always the same every time when they pull it off their shelves. It's going to need to be uniform. It's going to need to seem like quality matters, because quality does matter. So there's a lot of potential. Everybody understands there's 25,000 different products that could come about. Let's concentrate on 5 or 10 that are very, very important. And let's put purpose over profit. As we're moving this forward, especially in the early days, we have to be very, very careful. There are profiteers in all manners of business and in the hemp industry. We need to make sure that we're giving back to the communities, that we are helping farmers farm, helping processors process, helping product formulators make easy choices about this being a mainstream product that is reliable and sustainable. And we believe that will come about relatively soon. One of the things that is really neat about industrial hemp, this has been surprising to us, but young people think this is cool. They're willing to work and do jobs that they would not do because this is industrial hemp. They don't do this for flowers. They don't do this for many other wonderful agricultural products, but we are able to attract many young people doing farm work, and it's amazing, and it's greatly needed in Kentucky at this point in time. It's greatly needed anywhere there are farming communities that are in need. So, in conclusion, we want to say thank you to everybody in the room for being stewards and moving this forward. We understand what we think is important. We want to also suggest that New York matters. New York really matters. As New York goes, the nation goes. The biggest and most influential market around the globe is right here. The best scientists and researchers are here in New York State, and some of the very best farmland is also here. New York can be very, very significant in the global move with industrial hemp as things move forward. So we're pleased to be part of making that history today, and we're eager to help move that forward. GenCanna, Generation Cannabis. Just imagine the potential. Thank you.